You actually know what I did. Maybe I needed to go to prison. Maybe it was good for me.
On November 21, 2025, one day before his 58th birthday, Boris Becker held his newborn daughter Zoe Vittoria for the first time in Milan. The timing was extraordinary. Exactly 1 year earlier, his mother Elvira had passed away at 89 years old. When Becker shared the news on Instagram with a black and white photo of 3 hands, he told German media outlet Bild that the timing felt like destiny that was almost impossible to grasp. This moment represented far more than just the arrival of his 5th child. 3 years earlier, in April 2022, Boris Becker had been led away in handcuffs from a London courtroom to begin serving time for hiding assets during bankruptcy proceedings.
Tennis champion Boris Becker jailed for 2.5 years.
The man who dominated Wimbledon at 17 years old spent 8 months behind bars. He lost about 15 pounds.
I'm going to beat the shit out of you. I'm going to kill you. I'm going to slice your throat. I'm thinking he's about to hurt me.
He made friends with what he called the tough boys for protection. He taught math and English to fellow inmates. Every morning he woke up in a cell, his tennis legend status meaning absolutely nothing.
You lose all your rights. You're nobody.
But you're Boris Becker.
Not in prison.
When he walked free in December 2022, deported back to Germany, most people wondered if Boris Becker could ever rebuild. The answer came through his relationship with Lilian de Carvalho Montero, who stood by him through trial and imprisonment. Then through their wedding in September 2024 in Portofino, Italy. Now through Zoe Vittoria, whose name carries its own story. Zoe means life in Greek. Vittoria is the feminine form of Victor, honoring Lilian's father. Understanding this redemption requires understanding the complicated family Boris built over decades. His journey through fatherhood maps his life's highest peaks and deepest valleys. The story begins in 1993 when Boris married Barbara Feltus, a German-American designer and actress whose father was African-American. Their first son, Noah Gabriel, arrived on January 18, 1994, followed by Elias Balthazar on September 4, 1999. What happened during Barbara's second pregnancy would fracture everything. On June 30, 1999, while his wife was carrying their second child, Boris met Angela Ermakova at London's Nobu restaurant. In February 2001, over a year after the birth of their daughter Anna on March 22, 2000, Boris finally acknowledged paternity following a DNA test. In his autobiography, Life is Not a Game, he didn't hide from it. He wrote that he was the one at fault, that he'd betrayed his pregnant wife, fathered a child, and hid the truth. Barbara filed for divorce in December 2000. She walked away with a $14.4 million settlement, their Fisher Island condominium, and custody of Noah and Elias. For Anna and her mother, life became something else entirely. Anna would later tell Bild that she had a difficult childhood, growing up with tremendous prejudice. The public hated her without knowing her, she said, only because of decisions her parents made. Boris moved on to his second marriage in 2009, wedding Dutch model Charlely Lily Kersenberg. Their son, Amadeus Benedict Edley Louis Becker, arrived in February 2010. This marriage also ended, with the couple separating in 2018. Lily would later claim to German media that Boris had kicked her and Amadeus out of their house when she left him, taking away her house and car keys. By the time Boris met Lilian around 2019 or 2020, he was working as a BBC commentator at Wimbledon and facing mounting financial problems. The bankruptcy proceedings had begun in 2017. When the charges came in 2022 for concealing $2.5 million in assets, Lilian didn't walk away. She attended every court hearing. When he was sentenced to 2.5 years on April 29, 2022, she blew him a goodbye kiss. What Boris experienced in prison changed him fundamentally. In his first interview after release with German broadcaster Sat.1 in December 2022, he explained that in prison he wasn't called Boris. He wasn't a champion. He was just a number. Nobody gave a damn about his 3 Wimbledon titles. He said he believed he'd rediscovered the human in himself. The lesson was hard, expensive, and painful, but it taught him something worthwhile. Speaking to BBC Radio 5 Live in April 2023, Boris was more direct about the brutality. Anyone who says prison life isn't hard and difficult is lying, he said. It was very brutal, very different from movies or stories. You fight every day for survival. Quickly, you have to surround yourself with the tough boys because you need protection. But he's a survivor, a tough cookie. He took the incarceration, but he'd also taken the glory. If anything, the experience made him a stronger, better man. The humility came through clearly. Prison certainly humbled him, made him realize that whether you're called Boris Becker or Paul Smith, if you break the law, you get convicted and incarcerated. In a May 2024 interview with Sports Illustrated, he described it as an existential crisis where it was important to find himself again. When you lose everything, the only thing remaining is your personality, your character. The crisis also taught him lessons about trust. In a September 2025 interview with Yahoo Sports, Becker admitted he'd become extremely cautious with people. His trust had been damaged. He used to be a people person who let everyone in. Not anymore. Now he's very cautious with only a small circle of friends. There's a saying, he quoted, "Show me your friends and I'll tell you who you are." Throughout this period, Lillian remained constant. Boris told media outlets that she was number one among those who stayed with him. Sometimes you need to be tested to find out who your true friends are, and it happened for him. Their September 2024 wedding at the Cervara Abbey in Portofino reflected their new life together. Boris told Hello magazine it was authentic, real, and a magical weekend he would never forget. Everybody cried, including him. The ceremony location, perched on a 14th century cliffside with ocean views, was one of the most unique places he'd been. The guest list, however, revealed complicated dynamics. His two oldest sons, Noah and Elias, served as best men, but two of his children were notably absent. Anna Ermakova, now 25, and building a successful career as a model and pop singer, wasn't invited. Neither was 15-year-old Amadeus. According to Lily, speaking to German outlet Bunte, Amadeus didn't even know about the wedding. When she approached him about it, he was completely surprised. His father hadn't told him anything. The relationship with Anna has always been complex, though Boris obtained joint custody in 2007 and has publicly supported her achievements, including when she won Germany's Let's Dance competition in May 2023. Periods of estrangement have marked their connection. Anna told Bild that during the coronavirus period, when Boris was on trial, contact was lost completely. Yet Boris's older sons have maintained closer ties. Noah, now 31, has built careers as a director, producer, and visual artist. He directed Lenny Kravitz's 2019 music video for 5 More Days Till Summer and regularly shares his artwork on Instagram. Elias, 26, has established himself as a model, signed at 18 and booking his first job with Dolce & Gabbana at Milan Fashion Week. He's walked runways for Boss and worked with Tatler and InStyle. He's also exploring music and fashion design. The financial recovery adds another layer. Boris was declared bankrupt in 2017. That bankruptcy was finally discharged in April 2024, clearing his debts. He's told German media he hasn't inherited or been given anything, that he's part of the working population now and has to work hard for his income. He and Lillian are building up their assets together. They've made Italy their home base since April 2023, choosing a life away from intense media scrutiny. When Lillian announced her pregnancy in June 2025, it signaled another new chapter. The couple kept details largely private during the pregnancy, though they shared occasional glimpses with fans. The birth on November 21st brought everything full circle. Boris posted the photo on Instagram on November 22nd, his birthday, with the simple caption, "Welcome to the world, Zoe Victoria Becker, 21/11/2025. Among the first to congratulate him was Lenny Kravitz, who wrote in German, "Glückwunsch, Gott segne euch, congratulations, God bless you." Within days, photographers spotted Boris and Lillian taking their first public walk with baby Zoe in Milan, Boris pushing the stroller, both parents looking relaxed and happy. The symbolic weight of Zoe's birthday hasn't been lost on Boris. He told Bild that his mother Elvira was someone he owed everything to. When she passed on November 21st, 2024, the day before his 57th birthday, it hit him especially hard. Instead of celebrating, he shared the sad news on Instagram with photos of them together, writing that she gave birth to him 57 years earlier and made him a strong man. Now, 1 year later, new life arrived on that same date. Some fans commented that it seemed like a sign from Mama Elvira watching over them. Whether you believe in such things or not, the timing offers a narrative arc that feels almost scripted. From the depth depth of grief and loss to the hope and promise of new life, all on the same calendar date. What makes this redemption story compelling isn't that Boris avoided consequences or minimized his mistakes. He served his time. He lost years of his life. His reputation took massive hits, and relationships with some of his children remained strained. The wedding that didn't include Anna or Amadeus isn't something you can explain away. Those absences speak to real pain and unresolved issues. The redemption comes instead from what Boris has done with his second chance. He's been remarkably honest in interviews about his failures. He hasn't played the victim. When he talks about prison being brutal, he couples it with acknowledgement that he broke the law and deserved the punishment. When he discusses his relationships with his children, he doesn't pretend everything is perfect. In a September 2025 interview, Boris acknowledged that being a father of 5 children means he knows a lot about babies. But unlike in the past, he tries to keep his private life private. He doesn't share everything with the public anymore. That restraint, that understanding that not everything needs to be performed for cameras, represents growth. He's also rebuilt professionally. He works as a tennis commentator and analyst for Eurosport during Grand Slams. He had a brief coaching stint with rising star Holger Rune that began in late 2023 before ending early in 2024. He participates in tennis events and maintains his connection to the sport that made him famous. He's carved out a life in Italy that seems to suit him. The question of whether Boris will be a different father to Zoe than he was to his older children remains open. He's 58 now, with 5 children spanning 31 years from Noah to Zoe. He's been through 3 marriages, bankruptcy, prison, and the loss of his mother. Those experiences have to change a person. In interviews, Boris has spoken about how fatherhood changed his perspective on life and his determination to be a positive influence. Whether those words translate to healing fractured relationships with Anna and Amadeus, whether they mean he'll be more present for Zoe than circumstances allowed him to be for his older children, time will tell. What we can see clearly is that Lillian has been transformative for Boris. Their relationship began during his darkest period and survived his imprisonment. She chose to marry him after his release, knowing everything about his past. They built a life in Italy together, away from the intensity of London or Germany. The lavish Portofino wedding wasn't hiding from the past, but celebrating their future. The Apple TV Plus documentary, Boom Boom, The World vs. Boris Becker, directed by Alex Gibney and released in 2024, gave Boris an opportunity to tell his story. Director Gibney told ABC News that Boris was generous with his time. Boris told ABC that he's always wanted to reach for the stars, did reach a few, but also reached the bottom. He described himself as a mensch, I'm a real mensch, with qualities and weaknesses. That self-awareness, that willingness to be seen as fully human rather than just a tennis legend or a tabloid scandal, might be the most significant evolution. The Boris Becker who entered prison in April 2022 was someone still caught up in the mythology of his own success. The Boris who emerged 8 months later had been stripped of all that. In prison, his name meant nothing. His titles meant nothing. What remained was just the person. And reportedly, that person found himself again. Found the inner refuge he'd always retreated to during difficult times. Learned hard lessons about trust, about friendship, about what really matters when everything else is stripped away. Zoe Vittoria's arrival on November 21, 2025, doesn't erase the complicated past. It doesn't fix the strained relationships with some of his children. It doesn't undo the years of poor financial decisions or the crimes that landed him in prison. But it does represent possibility. The possibility that people can change, that second chances can be meaningful, that redemption isn't about perfection, but about genuine growth. For tennis fans who watched Boris Becker dive across Wimbledon's grass courts at 17, who marveled at his power and intensity, who followed his career through 6 Grand Slam titles and Olympic gold, this later chapter might seem far removed from those glory days. But maybe it's more important. Athletic achievement is remarkable, but rebuilding a life after you've lost everything tests different kinds of strength. Boris has said that every crisis he's survived has been positive, that he's always learned more from his defeats than from his victories. Prison was certainly an existential crisis, one where finding himself again was essential. When you lose your freedom, your family, your money, your house, the only thing left is your character. For Boris, that became enough to start over. As he and Lillian walked through Milan with baby Zoe in late November 2025, they looked like any other new parents. The cameras captured them, of course, because Boris Becker will always be a public figure. But the images showed something beyond celebrity. They showed a couple working together, a man who'd been given another chance and seemed determined not to waste it. Think about the arc here. From Wimbledon at 17, youngest men's singles champion ever, to boom boom celebrity, to marriages and affairs and tabloid drama, to bankruptcy, to prison in London, to deportation, to rebuilding in Italy, to a third marriage, to new fatherhood at 58. Most people don't get that many chances. Most people who fall as far as Boris fell don't climb back. The question for you to consider is this: does true redemption require perfection or just honest effort at doing better? Because Boris Becker isn't claiming to be perfect now. He's not saying prison fixed everything or that he's become some enlightened sage. He's just saying he learned, he changed, and he's trying to build something better with the years he has left. Maybe that's enough. Maybe that's what redemption actually looks like in real life. Not a grand, dramatic transformation where everything gets fixed, but small, genuine changes. More honesty about failures, more appreciation for the people who stay, more understanding that names and titles and glory fade, but character, the inner refuge, that's what you take with you through everything. Zoe Victoria Becker arrived into a complicated family. She has half-siblings she might or might not have close relationships with. Her father has a past that will always be part of their family story, but she also arrived into a family that chose each other after seeing the worst. A family built not on fantasy, but on tested reality. If you followed Boris Becker's story from those early Wimbledon triumphs to this moment of becoming a father at 58, what do you make of his journey? Has he earned this second chance, or do the costs of his failures remain too high? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and if you found this deep dive into the Becker family compelling, subscribe for more stories that go beyond the headlines to explore how people really navigate redemption, failure, and the complicated business of being human.